A large percentage of our customer base have literally come to us with a check or a notice of a letter saying, get out of our bank within 30 days, within 60 days, or no notice at all. They called us and said, everything's frozen. Can you help me? I don't know why it's frozen. I suspect they know that I'm in the hemp industry.
That's Melissa Marsal, Executive Vice President and COO of Westtown Bank, a bank that specializes in working with hemp farmers. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I will talk to Melissa Marsal about why it's so hard for folks in the hemp industry to find reliable financial services. It's really interesting to hear about this from the bank's point of view. So I think you'll learn a lot from this today. And maybe you've had your own issues with banking in the hemp industry. And hopefully this will help you, give you some guidance, and yeah. Also, we're going to have lots of hemp news nuggets today. I skipped that segment last week, and I felt like we had some catching up to do. There's a lot going on. But first, let's have a quick word from our sponsor, IND Hemp. IND Hemp is currently seeking summer interns for an exciting opportunity in Montana this year. Are you or someone you know a college student majoring in agricultural economics, mechanical engineering, or agronomy? Well, this is a great opportunity to learn about the fiber and grain side of hemp, and then take that knowledge home with you to help build the hemp industry in your community. IND Hemp is committed to a diverse and inclusive working environment and encourages anyone with an interest in hemp fiber and grain to apply. Go to indhemp.com to learn more. And I would just like to add to that IND Hemp is also looking for full-time employees. You know, they've got this fiber processing plant coming online soon, and they're going to need people out there in Fort Benton, Montana. I will have more information about those job opportunities on next week's show. All right, some news nuggets for this first full week of April 2021. I guess the big news is that New York State and New Mexico voted just last week to legalize recreational marijuana. There will be lots of, implications and ramifications from that, but there's lots of hemp news to catch up on, so here we go. This first one comes from clickondetroit.com. The headline reads, "Study. No evidence of liver toxicity from use of CBD from hemp." Researchers presented initial results from a study to the FDA in March, suggesting there is no evidence of liver disease from the use of hemp-derived CBD products. The study, conducted by a team from clinical research company ValidCare, aims to help the FDA to determine how to appropriately regulate CBD products. Here's a story from newsdakota.com. The headline reads, "U.S. hemp seed production increasing." The story says that hemp cultivated for seed and grain comprised approximately 10% of 2020 total U.S. acreage, approximately 14,000 acres, according to data provided by Hemp Benchmarks. By comparison, Canadian cultivators grew more than 5 times that acreage, beyond 75,000 acres, the vast majority of which were exported to the United States. Exports to the U.S. have exceeded $300 million since 2010, and the U.S. is quickly closing the gap as the artificial protectionism provided by prohibition evaporates. Growth in U.S. acreage is being fueled largely by increased consumer demand for plant-based proteins, as well as optimism that hemp legalization will broaden potential markets for grain. Hemp grain production in the United States is most concentrated in 3 states: Indiana, Montana, and North Dakota. New Frontier data projects that 2020 retail sales for hemp food products will account for $67.1 million and grow to $144.1 million industry by 2025. The fastest growing product category of hemp seed products is protein powder, which rang up $4.7 million in total sales in 2020. Here's a story from Brownfield Ag News, written by Larry Lee. Headline reads, "Far fewer Wisconsin hemp licenses have been issued so far." According to the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, there were 1,301 licensed growers in 2020. So far in 2021, the state's data shows there are only 340 grower licenses issued, but applications are still coming in for this growing season. Processor licenses are also down from last year, with only 248 so far in 2021, compared to 619 a year ago. I wonder if that's a trend we will see in other states, and I kind of think it will be as people grow sort of less enamored with the CBD side of things. All right, here's a story from the Alabama Political Reporter. It's written by Brandon Mosley. And the story says that the Alabama Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday passed a controversial amendment to another bill that would add Delta 8 and Delta 10 to the Alabama Controlled Substances list. This amendment is being vociferously opposed by the Alabama hemp industry. Some herbalists claim that Delta 8 and Delta 10 have their own unique health benefits like CBD. Both products like CBD are currently legal in the state of Alabama. On Wednesday, the Alabama Senate Judiciary Committee sought to change that. I will point out that the U.S. Hemp Roundtable has come out against marketing these alternate THC products as hemp, so keep that in mind. Here's a story from hempgrower.com. It's about Senator Rand Paul reintroducing his Hemp Act to Congress. The story says that in January 2021, the U.S. Department of Agriculture issued its final rule on hemp. And while generally regarded as more flexible than the interim final rule, industry members have expressed concerns with the new regulation, including the low THC limit. Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky has reintroduced the Hemp Economic Mobilization Plan, that's an acronym, spells hemp, Act of 2021 to increase hemp THC limit to 1%. I reached out to Senator Rand Paul's office to see if we could talk to Senator Paul, but they have not called me back. So if you're listening, Senator Rand Paul, give me a call.
Industrial hemp.
All right, here's a story from Hemp Industry Daily, written by our friend Kristen Nichols. The headline says, New York marijuana law makes sweeping changes to hemp rules too. The story says that New York's new marijuana law includes a dramatic overhaul of how the state's hemp industry is regulated. The change could potentially send a flood of hemp operators to the high THC side of the industry. But it also leaves some big questions about the future of hemp extracts, such as CBD. The law, signed by Governor Andrew Cuomo last week, makes a first-in-the-nation attempt to regulate hemp operators working with flower and cannabinoid products the same way the state oversees marijuana operators, designating a new category for cannabinoid hemp that will be governed by a new Office of Cannabis Management. The agency's new Cannabis Control Board will set rules both for cannabinoid hemp and marijuana. I personally like this idea. I've been thinking about this for a while, that there should be sort of 3 lanes for cannabis, right? There should be your high THC cannabis, your middle of the road high CBD stuff, and then your lower THC stuff for fiber and grain. So, all right, New York, making it happen. Okay, here's a story from the Pennsylvania Business Report, written by Melina Druga. Headline reads, Program aims to increase hemp awareness. And then the story says that the Hemp Promotional Grant Program recently awarded 3 projects $157,335 to increase hemp and hemp products awareness and increase market opportunities for growers and processors. The program reimburses up to half of project costs that occurred between July 1, 2020 and June 30th, 2021. Here is an opportunity to revolutionize the norm for everything from agricultural conservation practices to home building, says Pennsylvania's Secretary of Agriculture, Russ Redding. But for the revolution to take hold, he says, and make a lasting impact, we need programs that raise awareness and educate growers, processors, and consumers alike. It's the purpose of this grant opportunity and the projects we've funded. Urban Affairs Coalition, Altogether Now PA in Philadelphia County, received $16,640 for agricultural hemp education and promotion events. Team Pennsylvania in Dauphin County received $32,095 for the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit. The summit aims to increase shared knowledge and resources in the hemp industry to inspire innovative investments and create transformative partnerships. And Don Services in Lawrence County received $109,000 to fund Project PA Hemp Home in conjunction with their Hemp Test Acres program. The program allows builders, contractors, farmers, and others to learn about hemp building materials and understand the potential economic impact of industrial hemp. So I've interviewed people from all three of these organizations. So if you would like to learn more about Team PA or Don Services or All Together Now Pennsylvania, go back through the archives of the show and you'll find them. I will also put links to those interviews right on the show page for this episode this week. Okay, here is a short little story from nutraingredients-us.com. Headline says, "Anything but CBD, the real opportunity in hemp." Picture this, it says, by 2030, the licensed land to grow hemp expects to increase over 9 million acres. But experts predict nearly 80% of the future allocation will go towards grain, not CBD. It is quite a contrast to our current state of affairs where we dedicate more than 525,000 acres licensed for hemp use almost entirely to phytocannabinoid production. Hemp fiber and grain remain grossly undervalued. Shocking, considering that hemp fiber alone has thousands of industrial applications. However, perhaps a more significant opportunity for hemp exists in the grain, and hemp seed should be much more of a focus than CBD for the food and nutritional supplement industry moving forward. Yes, we know that, but it's nice to hear that other people see that too. All right, here's a little something fun from MotherEarthNews.com. Making hemp milk is easier than you think. Hemp milk is amazingly easy to make, it says. Just mix hemp seeds and water in a 1:8 ratio, respectively, in a blender for at least 1 minute. If you want it creamier, strain it through cheesecloth to catch any residual seed particles. That's it. You can also make it sweeter if you do like your milk sweetened. And the beauty of it is that you can control what type and how much sweetener you use. Monk fruit or maple syrup is generally healthier than refined cane sugar. Yeah, make your own hemp milk. But I will say that in respect to dairy farmers, maybe we shouldn't call it hemp milk. Maybe it should be called something else. I don't know. Do you have any ideas what we should call it? Let me know. I would love to hear your ideas. All right, here's a story about hops and hemp. It's on greenstate.com. It's written by Elissa Escher. It says that if you love cannabis and you love beer, you've probably discovered that, like sprinkles and ice cream, the two are often better together. The reason? The hops in beer have similar properties to cannabis, meaning beer and hemp have a lot more in common than you might expect. Many will recognize the 4 key ingredients in beer: malt, yeast, water, and hops. But what many people don't know is that hops and cannabis are close cousins in the plant kingdom. These two plants share several terpenes in common, including myrcene, pinene, and humulene. Terpenes are what give cannabis and beer their flavor and aroma, which is why people use words like earthy, skunky, and floral to describe both cannabis and beer. It's also why the aroma and taste of cannabis and beer naturally pair well together. Yeah, okay. Here's a story following up on that. This is by Jillian Jamlinson from the Hemp Gazette, and she's wondering about that skunky cannabis smell. The story says that researchers believe they may have identified the chemical primarily responsible for complaints regarding the smell of some hemp cultivation operations. What has been described as a skunky-like smell may have nothing to do with certain terpenes, the aromatic compounds found in many plants, previously thought to be responsible. A research team consisting of Bayer Scientific, Iowa State University, and Texas-based odor experts, they used a triangulation approach of analytical chemistry to potentially identify the primary culprit as being 3-methyl-2-butene-1-thiol, or 3,2,1-MBT. This compound is among 7 contained in a skunk spray that gives the critter its smelly reputation. 3,2,1-MBT is also the same chemical causing the skunk-type aroma and odd flavor in light-struck beer. This occurs when beer is exposed to strong light, which causes certain compounds in hops to degrade. Light-struck beer is also known as skunked beer, and is one of the reasons why beer is usually stored in brown rather than clear or green bottles, as brown glass transmits less visible light. There's a connection between hops and cannabis. They are in the same plant family, but the 3,2,1-MBT discovery isn't the end of the story. The researchers say identifying the chemical is only the first step in addressing the issue, and efforts are continuing to further evaluate the odor and the most appropriate manner of mitigation. The researchers note other compounds in cannabis's gas phase emissions and reactions in the atmosphere may significantly affect the perception and measurement of 3,2,1-MBT. Additionally, it seems not all hemp farms stink, and this may be key in developing varieties that contain the required level of desired chemicals or other attributes and less of the undesirable, such as 321-MBT. All right, and so that concludes the news nugget portion of today's show. I will have all of the links to all of these stories on the show page for you at lancasterfarming.com. All right, so let's get into our conversation about hemp farmers and the world of banking. Melissa Marsal from Westtown Bank, welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Eric. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Can you give us a little introduction?
Sure. I am the EVP COO of Westtown Bank and Trust. We are an Illinois chartered bank, but we have a presence pretty much nationally. So we bank a lot of customers no matter where they're at. I'm obviously from the accent, not from Chicago. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, where our holding company is headquartered here in Raleigh.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for joining me today. And we're going to talk about hemp banking.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's well known that hemp farmers have a hard time finding financial services. Can you talk about sort of why that is? Like, what's the deal from the bank's perspective?
So unfortunately, as the case may be, our governing regulators still tend to see hemp overall as what we consider high-risk business, which, again, I would love to make the arguments all day long that it's not. But there are several businesses that are classified as high-risk businesses, not just hemp. There would be private ATMs, money service businesses, internet gambling, alcohol, tobacco. So they get lumped all together. And what that means for a bank is we have a higher level of what we call KYC or CIP, Know Your Customer and Customer Information Program, as well as enhanced due diligence. So we are required to take it a little step above what you would normally do. And there's just some banks that don't want to dedicate the time and the resources because they don't get the added value is the honest answer.
Okay. So hemp farmers are, business people who are in need of financial services. And farmers in general are smart and resourceful. So like what are hemp farmers doing, in lieu of having reliable banking services? What are some of the stories you've heard?
I think, unfortunately, we've still got a little bit of that don't ask, don't tell. So I think some hemp farmers have had some relationships with their banks for years in a good way. And so they're starting a sort of a side hemp business and trying to cover up with a different name or not changing the name or simply not disclosing it for fear they're going to get shut down. So I think there's a lot of that going on out there. And then we have tried to create a community, both, with some of us who are willing to bank it as long as, everybody's following the guidelines. But there's several associations, there's several marketplaces and ecosystems that I think now folks are finally tapping into it and they're finding resources to go to. But, we still have a lot of folks out there that are charging a lot higher interest rates and do some interesting things. And it's not bad. It's because it's private equity or, venture capitalists and funding that they're getting. But that's a little bit, as you know, Eric, with farmers. They're trying to probably farm on their land and grow a different crop, frankly, and it's a little bit harder. So there's not a whole lot of alternatives out there. So I think those are the two resources they're doing in lieu of traditional banking.
Yeah. Okay. And it's good that, we can bring hemp banking sort of into the light.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So even with all like the positive movement in the industry, banks are still hesitant, huh? They
are. And, I think a lot of folks are sitting on the sideline waiting for the Safe Banking Act to pass, although, that doesn't really impact whether you can or shouldn't bank hemp farmers. But I do believe a lot of folks are thinking that might give them a little bit of more width and girth to be able to do it. So they feel a little bit safer doing it. But I don't think a lot of them are going to run to the market, Eric, and do it because, again, they don't see the value in this and they probably haven't gone and interacted with hemp farmers or with the industry in a whole just to say, hey, these are legit great businesses. Why aren't we jumping on it and banking it? And they, again, won't do the little bit of extra work that's required of them to do it.
You mentioned the Safe Banking Act. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. That covers the overall cannabis space, and it's tried to pass a couple of times, as we know, but we're real hopeful with this administration that the version that's out there is going to fully go through this year. It provides a safeguard or safe harbor, if you will, for banks, financial institutions. For it literally says the regulators cannot come in and criticize you or place any action on your institution simply for the reason that you're banking the overall cannabis space. So they're not doing that today, ironically, but there is still a lot of, people out there that are saying, I won't touch that until I at least know my regulators aren't going to come in and say, what are you doing? So if you have a good active program and you're able to do it, it will allow you to openly bank it. And quite frankly, it's one of the best things that could happen to the industry and the banks, because we'll get the cash off the street, which, as we all know, that's a huge problem.
Right. That's a big risk for farmers to be dealing with cash.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. I mean, we just saw a notice go out the other day from the IRS saying, we've got to solve for this because we've got, the cannabis industry rolling up with bags of cash at the IRS to pay their taxes. And, what risk are we all putting everybody in for that? And so it's just ironic that something like the Internal Revenue Service is calling for somebody to help this, industry.
Right. Do you think like a federal legalization of cannabis across the board would make a big sweeping difference as far as banks go, or would they still be hesitant?
I think they'll still be hesitant, Eric. I'd like to say I think it'll make some difference for folks like us who are in the hemp space. Obviously, it would make a big difference for us and maybe open up further channels. And I think smaller and regional banks is where we're starting to see a whole lot of folks opening this up. The larger banks, quite frankly, are continuing to get out of it, and that's fine. If I'm all for small community and regional banks being the leaders in this industry and knowing it well. But I think the folks that are hesitant, because again, it's still going to be considered high risk business. So there's just you either are in that or you're not in that most of the time. So, our bank and several other banks that decide to bank higher risk businesses or niche businesses, we again get the value of going after something different than what everybody else is going after. Okay. And if you don't understand that value and you don't have board members and executive members of your management team like we have, you can't, again, get out of your own way to understand this is something you should do and you should go after because it is a lucrative business and it's a meaningful business.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Like, why is Westtown Bank actively, pursuing hemp farmer business? I mean, I think it's great that you are, but tell me about sort of the decisions behind going after that market.
Well, we love to pride ourselves on being entrepreneurs and not bankers. And so, and we have always been very successful in niche banking. We do a lot of guaranteed government lending programs. And with those, we sort of try to find a sector that we can really grab a hold of and understand and know. Solar is a big industry for us, for example. But we stumbled upon hemp banking, quite frankly. Our president CEO in Edenton, North Carolina, had a seed farmer come to him and looking for some kind of solution because he was storing his seeds where, it didn't feel safe. And we have a, way to do it. And we just saw, why is this not being banked? What's going on? So we took a very much a active, leaned in approach and said, well, let's just study it. Let's figure out what we can do with it, why we can do it. And we found it to be something that we could manage very easily. We could write a program around it. We employed a company called Risk Scout that we partner with that helps us do it and helps us streamline our processes. But it gave us a really great low cost of deposits. And again, provided a sector, in our industry, Eric, you don't get people call you and say, hey, my goodness, can you open up a bank account? We've heard about you. You're normally out on the street beating, down doors for the same business over and over. So for us to be able to go out there and offer a service that other banks weren't offering, it made us stand out. And again, we saw that it was a legal and a great business, and why not go after it?
Yeah, right. What kinds of financial services should or could hemp farmers be taking advantage of?
Everything that any other business should and could be taken advantage of. We again, I spoke earlier about having a guaranteed government lending arm, and we're very active into that arena. So with that, we have access to FSA loans, USDA loans, SBA loans, and there's some nuances to them. But again, we know what those nuances are. So for the hemp farmer, for example, you can't be all just hemp farming to be eligible for FSA. There's some conditions for a percentage of the farm. For USDA, it needs to be in a state that's approved has a plan up under the 2018. And SBA, there's a lot more fluidity and flexibility with that. But that's what we have. We have an insurance subsidiary, so we do have some insurance options as well. And then for financial services, if you come in and get through our Hemp Compliance program, which is, just answering questions and providing us with lab tests or, licensing, you're opened up to everything we do. Wire, ACH, bill pay, online treasury management services, anything that any other legitimate business would have.
Nice. Can you talk about some of the success stories or, without mentioning people's names or whatever, but talk about some of the hemp businesses that you've been working with?
Sure. We've had it, I would say, I couldn't even give you the number, but a large percentage of our customer base have literally come to us and with a check or a notice of a letter saying, get out of our bank within 30 days, within 60 days, or no notice at all. They've called us and said, everything's frozen. Can you help me? I don't know why it's frozen. I suspect they know that I'm in the hemp industry. So we've had to stop everything and say, we've got to get this customer onboarded fast. We've got to get, merchant processing. We've got to get wire and ACH. Their business has got to keep going. So we have been successfully able to get them through our program fast and furious, get them online and up and running within 2 to 3 days so they didn't miss a beat. So those are several of those. And then we have a couple of integrated companies that are processors, have a farming arm and subsidies of that. Same type of situation where they had some inventory or had some farmers lined up ready to pay them, got shut down, and we quickly went in and were able to save that. And I feel like it is saving a business. If you can't run a business like you normally are, then you got to be able to actively get pursuit of it. And that's what we've been able to do.
Good. Okay. Do you make any distinction between the different sectors of the industry, like CBD farmers versus fiber and grain farmers? Is there different sort of levels of risk from a bank's perspective?
There is from our perspective. And I'll say this cautiously because, when anybody wants to venture in the bank, the first thing they do is sit down and do a risk assessment. We did that, and we did exactly what you're saying, a hemp farmer versus a e-commerce versus a retail fiber grain. They all, in our mind, risked out differently. But until the regulators and the banking world can really catch up with that, I don't know that we've gotten it to that level. And we will. We as an industry will help set these standards that says, hey, there are different levels. We're starting to monitor that and create a decision that will help understand that. So we know it. We still have to, again, consider the industry as higher risk. But again, as we continue to go down this road, what we hope to do is make that distinction and help them understand, hey, if you're growing for fiber grain, it's not going to go hot. So this is why we're saying you need to look at this differently. Mm-hmm. Or, post-harvest testing versus pre-harvest testing and what that means. And so, I think we and other banks that are really getting educated in this are going to be the ones to set those standards.
Okay. And are you working with farmers mostly in North Carolina, or talk about where sort of your range of farmers is?
We are everywhere. We are, again, fortunate enough that we have a presence where, as long as no one needs to come into a branch, and we try to alleviate that. With us recently opened up a Westtown Payments, which is our merchant processing. We have really alleviated a lot of need for cash out in the industry. And again, for a farmer to be able to pay in wire or ACH. So as long as no one needs a physical branch, we bank everybody everywhere. And I don't know that we have a concentration. We have North Carolina, Illinois, Florida, Oregon, Colorado. I mean, we're pretty much everywhere. Michigan, anywhere that you have the license and we can prove it and you're running a legitimate business, we're happy to look at it.
Okay. And then everything's sort of done on the phone or over like Zoom calls or?
Over line, over Teams meetings, over Zoom calls. One thing our bank at least prides herself in, and I'm not certainly not trying to have a commercial here, but a lot of banks miss the tech, only have the technology piece. We have the technology piece and everything that the larger banks have, but we obviously have a team of people that are dedicated to the hemp industry. We continually have training, we get education, we do webinars, and those are the folks that the farmers and the growers and actually talk to. So when they say something about 0.3% THC and Delta 8, when we start really talking about these things and cannabinoids, we got a group of folks who know what we're talking about, so we can ask intelligent questions and give feedback. So we have the online technology, but you can also pick up the phone and talk to a human whenever you need to.
Good. All right. How about just working with farmers in general? Does Westtown have a history of just working with agriculture?
We have done some. I wouldn't say it's something we've primarily focused on. We again have a lender that's focused on FSA and lending, and he was a previous farmer himself, so that makes a big difference. So he has really built up that industry, and we're trying to actively pursue it a bit more. But it's not something historically has been a primary focus for us.
Okay.
But again, it's something we are growing into exponentially.
Okay. For farmers out there who are, looking for banking services, what should they be considering when they're looking for a bank?
They need to ask the question, do you have a hemp compliance program? If they're banking somewhere that they don't, again, it's the don't ask, don't tell, and they don't have, members of the team to even know what hemp means, run, because they're eventually going to catch up with you and going to close you down. And be prepared for questions to get asked and take that as a good thing and not a bad thing. We've had some folks come to us that got closed out and hey, we didn't get asked this by our prior bank. And I'm like, well, now you're here because they closed you down. So, just be prepared, provide testing result, licensing, and all the things that go with the business, just like we would with any other business. But just make sure there's an all-in approach at that bank, and there's not just some sales guy trying to get your business that may not even know whether the bank has a compliance program. And then all of a sudden, again, a transaction hits and an account gets closed out. So I would specifically ask, and it's okay to even, say I need to speak to someone, maybe executive level or something, so you really have a good feeling they're all in.
Okay. What else should farmers know about Westtown Bank?
Well, again, I think, it's the friendly approach, and that, we're welcoming to everybody as long as you're willing to answer the questions and know that we are going to ask it and be friendly to you and want to help you and provide you a safe place. And, oftentimes if we can't help, we have other resources, and we try our best to get somebody and, taking care of our business is, banking the industry, but we've also taken an active participation into the overall industry to be able to help and to advocate to get things passed and to get things through. So, we trademark hemp banks here. We're all in.
Okay, great. Do you know of other banks in that are sort of doing the same sort of thing with hemp farmers, or are you guys sort of the pioneers and sort of actively, courting hemp farmers?
There are some others. Unfortunately, there's been some that have come in and got back out that have been local and otherwise. I honestly, I don't know of any others who have the advertisement and have embraced it as far and as much as we have, but there are others out there that are in the space and actively banking it.
Okay. Yeah, when I go to westtownbank.com, I see right there on the homepage, hemp bank right here. So
yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay. Great. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about sort of your work in the hemp space?
No, just again, super excited. I love seeing, especially for farmers, I think it gives a new good industry. I hope to see a lot more in the fiber and grain space, and I think everybody feels that way. I wish we could figure out how to get this into the textile industry and do some things more mainstream. I think CBD was the gold rush, for a moment in time. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of farmers got taken horrible advantage of or got some bad experience with some tolling agreements or some processors. But, from what I've seen, once you get yourself activated in this community and find the good players, it's an incredible, incredible industry. And again, I think it's not run out of steam, and I think there's a lot more to be done. And I hope to see it done, and I hope to continue to do what we can on the banking side of it to make it happen.
All right, great. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. I think the long-term potential and promise is really in the fiber and grain side.
Yep. Yeah, and I always encourage, if we have farmers that come to us and they're not members of associations or things like this that you're doing, we always encourage them to do that, because the more we can collaborate, the more that we can set the standard. It's still a brand new industry, and it's up to the industry to set these standards and to, lobby for legislation and for, and again, I think, Eric, that's another misnomer out there. We're all looking for guidance. Us as banks, we're looking for guidance to do this the right way. E-commerce and the CBD is looking for the FDA or anybody else to give guidance. The farmers are looking for somebody to make a decision, for the DA to get in or get out of it, and the USDA to be a part of it. But I think that's, again, another big part of it. We all want guidance. And I think as we band together, that's how we'll get the guidance and the standards.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, Melissa Marsal, it's so great to talk to you today. Thank you for spending some time with me this morning.
Absolutely, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. I know you've got other hemp podcast options out there, but I do appreciate you spending time with us. I will have a link to Westtown Bank on the show page for this episode, so please check it out. And of course, all of those news nuggets will be there waiting for you too. So, my name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. And I am excited to once again tell you about this road trip that I am embarking on this summer. I'm going to go out onto the fiber and grain supply chain. I'm going to go meet some folks out there who are making it happen. I think it's time to shine a great big light on the fiber and grain side of this industry. If you want to learn more about that or find ways to help me do this, please get in touch. You can email me at podcast@lancasterfarming.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at LFPodcastHemp, where you can see lots of pictures of the people that I talk to and other things. Sometimes I post pictures of my dog sitting in chairs. He loves sitting in chairs. Okay, so until next time, I will see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
This episode of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast, episode 127, is copyright 2021 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited and produced by yours truly, Eric Herlock. The music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.